The law firm's conference room felt suffocating despite its vaulted ceilings and panoramic views of downtown Seattle. I sat at the far end of the mahogany table, iPad balanced on my knee, reviewing the final documents for my latest acquisition while my family buzzed with anticipation around me. "Can you believe Madison actually showed up?" my sister Vanessa Stage whispered to our mother, not bothering to lower her voice. "I thought she'd be too busy with her little office job." Mom laughed, adjusting the Cartier bracelet Grandpa had given her 2 Christmases ago. "Well, even Madison deserves something from the will. Your grandfather was always fair even to the less accomplished grandchildren." I didn't look up from my screen. The Techstar Industries merger had closed yesterday, $420 million, bringing my private equity portfolio to just over $2 billion in total assets. My legal team needed final approval on 3 subsidiary transfers before the market opened Monday. "Ladies and gentlemen, Harold Williamson, Grandpa's attorney for 40 years, entered with a leather portfolio." His expression was carefully neutral. "Thank you for your patience. Shall we begin?" Vanessa practically vibrated with excitement. She was 29, still living in our parents' guest house, working part-time as a lifestyle influencer, with 62,000 Instagram followers who watched her post sponsored content for detox teas and fast fashion brands. "Finally," Dad boomed, slapping the table. "Let's see how the old man divided the empire." Grandpa had died 3 weeks ago, peacefully in his sleep. I'd found out via a group text. Grandpa passed last night. Funeral Saturday at 2 p.m. I'd delivered the eulogy. I'd talked about our Sunday morning breakfasts at his Mercer Island estate, where we'd discuss market trends, corporate governance, and the philosophy of building generational wealth. Where he taught me everything about leveraged buyouts, hostile takeovers, and the art of knowing when to walk away from a bad deal. My family had looked confused during my speech, assuming I was romanticizing some hobby we'd shared. To my daughter Patricia and son-in-law David, Harold read, "I leave the sum of $1 million each, to be placed in managed trusts with quarterly distributions." Mom's smile flickered. "Trusts? We can't access the principal." "The trust structure ensures long-term financial security," Harold explained. "Per Robert's specific instructions, distributions are limited to $50,000 quarterly." Dad's face reddened. We expected control of the investment portfolio." "We'll address the investment holdings shortly," Harold said. To my granddaughter Vanessa Claire Morrison, "I leave the sum of $4 million, the Aspen Ski Lodge, the complete art collection from the Mercer Island estate, and the 1967 Shelby GT 500. The room erupted. Vanessa screamed, jumping from her chair to embrace our mother. $4 million. Plus the lodge. Oh my God, the car alone is worth $500,000. That's my girl." Dad wrapped them both in a crushing hug. He knew quality when he saw it. "Nessa. You earned every penny." "The Aspen property is currently valued at $6.2 million, Harold added quietly. Vanessa spun toward me, her face glowing with triumph. "Did you hear that, Maddie? $6.2 million in real estate. Plus $4 million cash. That's over $10 million. She pressed her hand to her chest in exaggerated sympathy. "I almost feel bad for you. But honestly, what did you expect? Grandpa always loved me best." I'd visited Grandpa every Sunday for 9 years. Without fail. Without exception. "Yeah, Madison," Dad chuckled. "Hope you're not too disappointed with whatever's left. Maybe some books or something. You always did have your nose in those business journals." To my granddaughter Madison Elizabeth Morrison, Harold read, his voice carefully controlled, "I leave the contents of my private study, including all files, documents, records, business papers and personal effects contained therein." Silence. Then Vanessa doubled over laughing. "Files? He left you filing cabinets." She gasped for air between giggles. "Oh my God, that's perfect. The nerd gets the paperwork. I'm dying." Mom tried to look sympathetic. "Well, sweetheart, maybe there's a rare book or two you can sell. That's something." "Maybe an antique desk," Dad offered with barely concealed amusement. Vanessa high-fived both parents, the sound sharp in the elegant room. "Enjoy your tiny inheritance, Maddie. At least I got Grandpa's real fortune." She turned to Harold. "That's everything, right? We can celebrate now." "Not quite." Harold's tone had acquired an edge. We need to discuss the business holdings. Right, the companies. Mom sat straighter. Robert's investment portfolio. That's the real inheritance. Indeed. Harold extracted a second folder, this one embossed with Morrison Holdings, Grandpa's original company, founded in 1972. Robert Morrison was the founder and majority shareholder of Morrison Holdings, which encompasses 23 subsidiary companies across manufacturing, commercial real estate, technology investments, and venture capital. The combined portfolio value is currently assessed at $1.8 billion. Vanessa's champagne glass, she'd brought her own bottle anticipating celebration, stopped halfway to her lips. 1.8 billion? However, Harold continued, 8 years ago, Robert began systematically transferring his controlling interests in these companies. The final transfer was completed 16 months ago. My father leaned forward, hands flat on the table. Transferred to whom? That's where I'll need to defer to someone with more expertise. Harold gestured to the door. I've asked Catherine Park, the senior trust manager at Morrison Holdings, to join us. She's been overseeing the transition. Catherine. The door opened and Catherine Park entered, briefcase in hand, her expression professional. We'd had coffee on Tuesday to discuss the integration timeline for Techstars assets into my existing portfolio structure. She met my eyes briefly. I nodded. Catherine, Harold said, would you please explain the current ownership structure of Morrison Holdings to the family? Catherine opened her briefcase with practiced efficiency, extracting a bound presentation. Of course. As of 16 months ago, Robert Morrison transferred 100% of his controlling interests in Morrison Holdings and all 23 subsidiary companies to a single entity, Apex Capital Group. The room went still. Apex Capital Group is a private equity firm, Catherine continued, distributing ownership documents around the table, founded in 2018 by Madison Elizabeth Morrison. My mother's face drained of color. What? Madison has been the sole owner and CEO of Morrison Holdings since the transfer was finalized, Catherine said, placing documents in front of each family member. Robert remained as chairman emeritus in an advisory capacity until his death, but Madison has held operational control for the past 16 months. Vanessa stared at me like I'd sprouted wings. You can't. You work as an administrative assistant. I never said I was an administrative assistant, I replied calmly, not looking up from my iPad. You all assumed that when I mentioned I worked in administration. I administer a multi-billion-dollar investment portfolio. There's a significant difference. But you're always on your computer. Mom's voice cracked. At every family dinner, every holiday. Running a $2 billion company requires constant attention, I said. Market conditions don't pause for Thanksgiving dinner. Dad grabbed the documents Catherine had placed before him, scanning frantically. This is fraud. She manipulated him. Dad was elderly, confused, vulnerable. Robert was evaluated by 4 independent physicians, Harold interrupted sharply. All confirmed his complete mental competency at the time of each transfer. I also have comprehensive video documentation of our discussions where he explicitly stated his intentions and reasoning. What reasoning? Vanessa's voice broke. Why would he give everything to her? Catherine pulled out a laptop, opening a video file. Robert recorded an extensive statement. Would you like to see it? She pressed play without waiting for consent. Grandpa's face filled the screen, sitting in his study, the one filled with files and documents he'd left to me. He looked directly into the camera with those sharp blue eyes that had built an empire from nothing. If you're watching this, I'm gone, and Patricia, David, and Vanessa are probably having collective heart attacks, Grandpa said, a slight smile playing at his lips. So let me be perfectly clear about my decisions. Mom made a wounded sound. Patricia, David, I love you. But love doesn't excuse willful blindness, Grandpa continued. You never asked about the business. Never wanted to learn. Never showed interest unless it meant money in your accounts. Vanessa, you couldn't explain what Morrison Holdings actually does if someone paid you, despite me trying to explain it at every family gathering. Vanessa's hands trembled around her champagne glass. Madison was different, Grandpa's expression softened. Every Sunday for 9 years she came to my house. We had breakfast. We talked about market philosophy, about corporate governance, about the responsibility that comes with building something that outlasts you. She asked questions. He challenged my assumptions. She cared about the work, not just the wealth. The video zoomed slightly closer. More importantly, she built Apex Capital without asking me for a single dollar. Started with $50,000 she'd saved from her actual administrative assistant job. Yes, Vanessa, she worked her way up and turned it into a $2 billion empire through pure intelligence, strategic thinking, and relentless work ethic. Grandpa leaned back. When she turned 26, she'd already made her first million. By 28, she'd acquired her first company. She earned everything she has. Dad's face had gone ashen. That's who I want running my legacy, Grandpa said firmly. Someone who understands that wealth is built, not inherited. Someone who'll preserve what I created instead of liquidating it for a bigger house or a fancier car. He paused. Patricia, David, Vanessa, I've left you more money than most people see in 10 lifetimes. Be grateful. But the company's the real work, the legacy, that goes to someone who'll actually honor it. The screen went black. Jesus Christ, Dad whispered. Catherine closed her laptop. Madison, these are the updated Q4 projections you requested. The board meeting is Thursday at 10. I accepted the folder. Thank you, Catherine. I'll review these tonight. Vanessa was crying now, mascara streaking down her face. But the lodge, the money. I thought. You still have everything Grandpa left you, I said evenly. $4 million, the Aspen property worth $6.2 million, the art collection appraised at $3.8 million, and a classic car worth $600,000. That's approximately $14.6 million. Most people would consider that extraordinarily generous. But the companies, she started, were already mine before Grandpa died. I've been running them for 16 months. Successfully, I might add. Year-over-year growth is up 31%. Mom's voice was small. Madison, surely we can discuss this as a family. You can't just what? I met her eyes. Continue running the companies Grandpa spent 50 years building? The ones I've been successfully managing while you all assumed I was answering phones somewhere. You could share, Vanessa tried. Like you were planning to share your $14.6 million inheritance? I raised an eyebrow. No, Vanessa. You got exactly what you celebrated getting 10 minutes ago. Grandpa's real fortune, as you called it. The companies are mine because I earned them. Catherine checked her watch. Madison, we should discuss the Techstar integration. The press release is scheduled for Monday morning. Right. I stood, gathering my iPad and the new documents. If you'll excuse me, I have actual work to do. Wait. Mom grabbed my arm. Madison, please. We're family. I looked at her hand on my arm, then at her face. The same face that had barely glanced up from her phone 3 years ago when I told her about my first major acquisition, assuming I was talking about buying a used car. You're right, I said quietly. We are family. Which is why Grandpa left you comfortable inheritances that will support you for the rest of your lives. But the business, the real work, goes to someone who actually understands what it takes to build something meaningful. I gently removed her hand and walked toward the door with Catherine. Madison. Vanessa's voice was desperate now, all smugness evaporated. You can't just leave like this. We need to talk about this. I paused at the threshold, looking back at her tear-stained face. Vanessa, you got exactly what you celebrated getting 15 minutes ago. Enjoy your tiny inheritance compared to the empire you thought you deserved but never earned. The words hung in the air as I walked out. The elevator ride down was silent until Catherine spoke. That was harder than you expected. Yes, I admitted, watching the floor numbers descend. I knew they'd be shocked. I didn't expect it to feel so satisfying. Catherine offered. I considered that. It's sad that they know so little about who I actually am. For what it's worth, Catherine said as the doors opened to the lobby, your grandfather would be incredibly proud of how you handled that. My phone started buzzing immediately. Vanessa. I silenced it. The Morrison Holdings board is solid, Catherine continued as we walked toward the parking garage. They've been impressed with your leadership. The Techstar integration is proceeding smoothly. Q4 projections are strong. Grandpa built something extraordinary, I said, unlocking my Tesla. I'm not going to let it collapse because my family doesn't think I deserve it. Catherine smiled. You didn't just deserve it, Madison. You earned it. That's the difference they'll never understand. As I drove toward my office, my phone lit up again. 37 missed calls. 22 voicemails. A flood of texts ranging from anger to pleading to accusations. I'd respond eventually. Set boundaries. Make it clear that the business was separate from family drama, that my success wasn't up for negotiation or redistribution. But right now I had companies to run. 23 of them, plus my own existing portfolio. The empire Grandpa and I had built together, through Sunday morning breakfasts and late-night strategy sessions. The legacy my family never bothered to notice because they were too busy assuming I was nobody. Their laughter had finally stopped. Their high fives had turned to stunned silence. And the tiny inheritance they'd mocked me about? It was worth $1.8 billion. My real work was just beginning.